Hello, hello. Welcome to the Enquiry podcast. This is a show that helps you to influence your reality to the greatest capacity in order to be able to use your life as the medicine that it is, to be able to know how to read the signposts and follow the breadcrumbs in order to express the fullness of who you are and what you're actually here for. I'm your host, Nerida Mills. I am a master psychosomatic practitioner, coach and facilitator, and it is my absolute pleasure to have you here. Welcome on board and let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of Enquiry. So we're at episode 11, and as I mentioned in episode 10, really wanting to unpack a little bit more around what does it actually mean to be or to have an integrated lifestyle. And we're looking at some of the philosophy around what we need to bring from an awareness standpoint, an intention standpoint, in order to do that really well. And the reason that I wanted to start here is because these are the things that really cover through all three of the pillars of, personal mastery, relationship mastery, and purposeful mastery. So, as I mentioned in last episode, one of the most important things to look at here is being willing to be completely invisible. Now, in order to be fully seen, you must be willing to be completely invisible. The reason for that is that if I am altering my behavior in any way, shape or form in order for me to be okay in my perception of your eyes, then I am not being fully myself. Therefore, I cannot be fully seen. I can't be. So, one of the greatest desires of any human being is to be loved for who they are, to be known for who they are, to be accepted for who they are. Now, the challenge with that is that most of us don't show who we are. Most of us actually put on the masks, walk around in armoring, and we protect ourselves from actually really ever fully being known. Now, why does that happen? It happens because when we are kids, we are taught that certain parts of ourselves are okay and to be celebrated, and certain parts of ourselves are not okay and should be really shut down, diminished, quietened, or suppressed. And, that's the experience of childhood, and that creates the voids that we then transform into our values as adults. What I mean by that is when I feel like something has been missing from my childhood, that is a void. There's a lack of the thing in my perception. So what happens as an adult is that you will be naturally drawn to create experience where there is an abundance of that thing. And that becomes your value, right? It's very important to you to have that thing because in your childhood, you perceived that it wasn't there. Regardless of whether it was or it wasn't, our experience of it was that it wasn't there, right? And some of the most beautiful healing is actually collapsing that perception in on itself when you can actually see the thing that you thought was never there was actually there all the time. It's a really beautiful process. But this is how we kind of start armoring up, right? It's how we start putting the masks on. It's how we start suppressing parts of ourselves. And to the point where it becomes habitual behavior, our identity is literally based on the fact that I am this kind of person. I am not that kind of person. I can't be that kind of person. One of the stories that I used to have running quite loudly was that I was too much for people. And so, I have a lot of energy. I've always had a lot of energy and a lot of, mental energy as well. Like I think a lot and I talk a lot. Or at least I used to, talking less and less actually as I get older, which is quite interesting. But, I have this, it's like a battery inside of myself that wants to be doing, wants to be experiencing, wants to be exploring, wants to be adventuring, right? And, that's just a part of my soul's expression in this life. But because it was turned up and, was not turned down rather, because it was not turned down in childhood, there were certain elements of that obviously would make it really hard for my parents to parent me. Because if I've got very spirited children myself. And, it can be really challenging to have a spirited child, even when we want to keep them spirited. Even when we don't want to diminish it, it can get exhausting as a parent. It can get overwhelming as a parent. If you're already overwhelmed and then you've got this kid, talking, or, jumping up and down or jumping all over you or whatever it is, then it can be really challenging to hold your center as a parent in that moment and, gently guide them without suppressing them or without putting them down in that. So, it's not about a parent not wanting all of you to come out, but we just have to also look at it from the standpoint of that, everybody's doing the best thing that they can given the tools that they have. So there's no judgment around that for me personally, but that's just the way that it happens. So we have these voids that are created in our childhood. They armor us up. They help us to form our masks. We get really good at it. If you think about, in pre-primary doing the paper mache masks and stuff like that, think of that from an identity standpoint. This is what we do. And then we get to the point where we're adults relating to other people and then feeling like nobody knows us because they can't, because we're too armored up, because we're too masked up. And it's so funny because, like, funny, not funny, right? But when we do that, even if people accept us in our masked up expressions, then there's a part of our brain, bless it, there's a part of our brain that will just whisper, just quietly in the background, yeah. But if they knew the real you, they wouldn't want to love you, hang out with you, be part of your life. They wouldn't accept you, right? So there is a part of us that knows innately that we are pretending, that we are showing up as people that we're not. And so even when we get the feedback that we're looking for, which is acceptance and love and all of those things, we're pack animals, it's one of our primal drivers. Even when we get those things, we can't trust it because we are not being all of ourselves. So this is why it's so important to be willing to be completely invisible, because when you're willing to be completely invisible, you can take off the masks, you can take off the armoring. The armoring is a little bit more challenging, I'm not going to lie, but you can do it, right, in order to face the idea of rejection, face the idea of not having a role to play that defines who you are or value to other people. And when we allow these, pieces of constructed self to fall away, what is left? In my experience, what is left initially is void. It's like there's this no man's land. I don't actually know who I am because I've spent my whole life being a constructed version of self. And so initially there's this space of nothingness where I don't actually know the answers to the questions that I would like to have certainty around. I don't actually know what I want, or at least I don't have access to that information yet. I don't know who I want to be. I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I enjoy. Why am I doing any of the things that I'm doing? Why am I in this career? Why have I decided to live where I live? Like all of these, questioning starts coming up because now all of a sudden the person who I thought I was supposed to be is no longer valid. So who am I underneath all of those things, right? And so the experience first becomes the void. But the void is one of the most fertile spaces to be in. And you'll experience the void in many different ways over a period of time. But like anytime you go through a dark night of the soul, you're in the void. Anytime you go into a death of identity, you face the void. So it's not a uncommon space. It's just not a regular space. But people can misinterpret the void as depression or feeling very lost is akin to the void because you don't know where you are. I don't recognize myself anymore, right? And there is an element where deep rest is required in the void. Spaciousness is required. Nothingness is required. And so the body will always meet that requirement with a desire to do so. So you will feel like maybe you need a little bit more time, quiet time. Maybe you do retract from the world for a little while. And that's okay. And again, completely normal. Where it becomes a challenge if it becomes habitual, or if you have a story telling yourself that it's wrong, then often that will elongate your experience in it. So, often we're going to hit the void space, but then what happens after that is a new version of yourself can be birthed. And, it's sort of like a flower opening when you meet yourself for the first time without those restrictions of who I'm supposed to be or who I'm not supposed to be. So the beautiful thing is that from that space, now I have an opportunity to live my life in ceremony because I trust my process and I trust my expression. And also I'm able to actually trust the love and connection that I have in my life because I know that it's from a standpoint of authenticity. I know that how I'm showing up, what I want, what I'm moving towards, the decisions that I'm making, the activities that I move into or away from are because it's actually what my soul desires. It's not because I feel like I have to show up for other people in a certain way. Like even this morning, had an opportunity for my son to join me on an activity, which I'd normally be like really happy to. And, I have... quality time is one of my love languages. It's a very high love language. It's pretty much my first, and it's the same with my son. And so quality time for the two of us is really important. It's the way that we share love. And so normally I would never say to him, actually, I want some time to myself. But this morning it felt really important and it felt really necessary for me to have that time. Now, in the past, I wouldn't have spoken to him about it or asked him if he was okay if we were able to spend time a little bit later so that I could have this time to myself. Because I would have had all of these stories around what it meant to be a good mum come up and all of my dogma getting in the way of my desire in the moment, right? And so this is how it can play out. Now, he was completely fine. Obviously, we rescheduled. We talked about what we could do instead later on. And so it's not about not meeting your obligation is the wrong word, but your agreements with people. It's not about not meeting those, but you can alter them and change them in a way that meets your needs, meets their needs, and everybody is still taken care of. You don't have to stay in one kind of rigid way of being. And that's what this really allows for, is a letting go of the rigidity of self that you perceive is required in order for you to be the good girl, the good boy, to be valued, to be worthy of this existence. So that's what we want to really you can do whatever you want. Obviously, I'm going to encourage you to just play with the idea of, if I let go of that and I was willing to be completely invisible, if I didn't need to be seen by anybody in any light, if I didn't need to be seen as a good girl, if I didn't need to be seen as a good boy, if I didn't need to be seen as somebody who contributed to my community, if I didn't need to be seen as a leader in my own right, if I didn't need to be seen in whatever, infill here, how would I choose to be showing up? Now, the cool thing is here is that, my initial fear when I started exploring this was, well, will I just become like a bum that doesn't give a shit about anybody else? But that's not the case. The beautiful thing is that actually the truth of your ability to contribute, the truth of your ability to influence becomes even more potent because you're doing it without the entanglement of expectation of return. Because when I need you to see me in a certain light, I expect certain behavior from you. And I expect certain acknowledgement from you. And so there's a neediness and a desperation that comes from that entanglement, that when you live your life in a way that is willing to be completely invisible, just no longer exists. So there's my invitation for you from this podcast. Really look forward to hearing how you guys go with this one. Please do message me. Let me know what's come up for you, what insights you've gained, what you notice in your own life. I'm here to support. So feel free to reach out and I will speak to you all soon. Much love. So that's it from us. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I would like to really acknowledge you for spending the time to explore what creates your reality and how you can influence it best. If you have absolutely loved this episode and the ones before it, then I highly encourage that you jump onto my newsletter list. You'll be able to find the details of that in the show notes. You can also follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Nerida Mills. Really, really, really looking forward to speaking with you again soon. If you have any comments, insights, feedback, anything that you would like to share from these episodes, please feel free to email me at info@neridamills.com. Until next time.